My girlfriend posted, "Never allow your boyfriend to block you from finding your husband," on Facebook after 3 years of what I thought was a solid relationship. The notification popped up on my phone during my lunch break at the tech company where I work as a software developer, and I had to read it twice to make sure I wasn't seeing things. I was sitting in my cubicle in downtown Chicago, staring at the screen while my turkey sandwich went untouched, trying to process what Lisa had just announced to the world about our relationship. We'd been living together in my one-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park for 8 months, splitting groceries and utilities while I covered the $2,200 monthly rent because she was still building her yoga instructor certification business and claimed her income was too inconsistent to handle major expenses. I thought we were building something real together, making plans for the future, talking about maybe getting a bigger place next year when her income stabilized from the private sessions she'd been booking. Just last weekend, I'd helped her set up her new meditation corner in our bedroom, moving my desk to make space for her singing bowls and essential oil diffuser because she said it would help her practice and bring in more clients. But apparently, while I was reorganizing my living space to accommodate her dreams and planning our shared future, she was advertising to her 800 Facebook friends that I was somehow preventing her from finding her actual future husband. The post already had 12 likes and several comments from her girlfriends with heart eye emojis and "Yes Queen" reactions, treating this like some empowering revelation instead of what it actually was, a public humiliation of her boyfriend of 3 years who'd been nothing but supportive of her career transition from retail management to wellness coaching. I clicked on the comments section and saw her friend Rachel had written, "Finally, you deserve so much better, babe," and another friend had added, "He's been holding you back from your true potential," which was particularly rich considering I'd paid for half her yoga teacher training program just 4 months ago. The casual cruelty of it hit me like a cold slap, the way she turned our entire relationship into a Facebook post designed to make me look like some controlling obstacle standing between her and happiness, when the reality was I'd been funding her journey toward that happiness for months. I sat there for exactly 30 seconds, feeling that familiar mix of hurt and anger that comes when someone you love treats you like you're disposable, watching her friends pile on with comments about her finally seeing the light and deserving to find a real man who appreciated her worth. Then I did the only logical thing a guy could do in that situation. I commented, "Hope you find him soon," right under her post, changed my relationship status from "in a relationship with Lisa Martinez" to "single," and tagged her entire family in the status update, including her mother Carmen, who'd never liked me anyway and always made subtle comments about Lisa settling for less than she deserved because I worked in tech instead of something more prestigious, like finance or law. The response was immediate and nuclear. My phone started buzzing with notifications as her family members saw the tag, then began ringing with calls from her sister Emma, who was probably trying to do damage control before their mothers saw the mess and started asking uncomfortable questions about Lisa's judgment and relationship choices. I watched Lisa's post disappear from Facebook within 4 minutes of my comment, but the screenshot notifications kept coming as people had already captured the drama for posterity and were probably sharing it in private group chats with captions like, "Girl really thought this was a good idea." Her phone must have been exploding with calls and texts from family members demanding to know what was happening, why she was publicly embarrassing herself and her boyfriend, and what exactly she meant by that cryptic post about finding a husband while she was supposedly building a life with me in our shared apartment. I turned my phone to silent mode, finished my sandwich with the first genuine appetite I'd had in weeks, and started mentally preparing for the confrontation that would inevitably be waiting for me when I got home from work that evening, knowing that Lisa would be furious about the family tags but completely unable to explain why her own post wasn't equally inappropriate and hurtful. I arrived home to find Lisa sitting on my couch in our shared downtown Chicago loft, mascara streaked down her cheeks and phone clutched in her hand like a weapon, ready to unleash 3 hours worth of built-up fury about my social media response. "How could you humiliate me like that in front of my entire family?" she screamed before I'd even set my laptop bag down, her voice echoing off the exposed brick walls of the apartment I'd been paying for while she figured out her career path. "You tagged my mother, Connor. My mother who already thinks I make terrible decisions." The irony was absolutely stunning. She was furious about being humiliated by my response to her post that had humiliated me first, like she expected to be able to publicly announce that I was blocking her from finding a husband without any consequences. "Maybe you should have thought about that before posting about finding your husband while you're living with your boyfriend," I replied calmly, hanging my jacket in the closet and noting how she'd apparently spent the afternoon crying instead of working on the client consultations she'd claimed were so important for growing her business. The argument escalated quickly from there, with Lisa switching between tears and rage, demanding I delete my comment and change my status back, while I stood there wondering when exactly she'd planned to inform me that she was apparently just marking time until someone better came along. "You know what? Fine," I finally said, cutting through her hysterics with the kind of calm tone that had served me well in tense client meetings. "If you're looking for a husband and I'm not husband material, then pack your stuff and move out by the end of the month." That's when she dropped the bombshell that made my blood run cold and revealed the true depth of her manipulation. She smiled through her tears with the cruel satisfaction of someone playing a trump card they'd been hiding for months. "Actually, Connor, I can't just move out," she said, wiping her eyes and straightening her shoulders like she was about to deliver a business presentation, "because I added my name to the lease 6 months ago when you renewed it, so legally I have just as much right to be here as you do." The words hit me like a physical blow, and I felt that sick feeling in my stomach that comes when you realize you've been thoroughly outmaneuvered by someone you trusted completely. I stared at her, processing the implications while she continued with obvious satisfaction. "I forged your signature on the lease renewal paperwork and sent it to the building management myself while you were at that work conference in Austin, so technically we're both on the lease now and you can't just kick me out because you're having a tantrum about my social media posts." The revelation that she'd been planning an exit strategy for months while I paid most of our shared expenses sent me into the kind of cold rage that makes you feel completely detached from your own emotions. "You forged my signature on legal documents?" I asked quietly, my voice deadly calm as I pulled out my phone to check my emails and confirm what she was claiming, finding absolutely no correspondence from our building management about lease changes because she'd intercepted and handled everything without my knowledge. "I did what I needed to do to protect myself," she replied with a defiant tilt of her chin, "because I knew you'd probably try to control the situation if I asked you directly about adding my name, and I deserve to have some security after supporting you emotionally for 3 years. The psychological warfare began immediately after that conversation, and Lisa proved to be remarkably creative in her methods of making my life miserable while technically staying within the bounds of tenant law. She started blasting her meditation music and yoga videos at full volume during my important work calls with clients, claiming she had just as much right to use the space for her business as I did for mine, forcing me to take video conferences from coffee shops or beg my colleagues to let me use empty conference rooms. Her book club friends suddenly needed to meet at our apartment twice a week, filling the living room with wine-drunk women who talked loudly about toxic masculinity and how men use financial control to manipulate women, obviously performing for my benefit while I tried to work on complex coding projects that required concentration. The passive-aggressive notes started appearing everywhere, on the bathroom mirror about shared cleaning responsibilities, despite her contributing nothing financially, on the refrigerator about respecting each other's food despite her eating groceries I paid for, and my personal favorite, taped to my laptop about creating a more equitable living situation, from someone who hadn't paid rent in 8 months. The situation reached peak insanity when Lisa brought Marcus home after her Thursday evening networking event, introducing him as her new friend who was a personal trainer specializing in holistic wellness and mindful movement therapy. Marcus was exactly what you'd expect, sculpted abs visible through his too-tight tank top, perfectly groomed beard, and the kind of confident smirk that said he knew exactly why he was there and didn't care about my feelings on the matter. "Connor, this is Marcus," Lisa announced with fake brightness. "He's been helping me develop a more integrated approach to my yoga practice, combining physical training with spiritual growth." I watched them settle onto my expensive sectional sofa to watch Netflix on my 65-inch TV that I'd saved for months to afford, while Lisa fetched wine from the bottle I'd bought for a quiet evening before this whole social media disaster exploded our relationship. "Hope you don't mind me using your home theater system," Marcus said with the kind of casual arrogance that made me want to throw him off my balcony. "Lisa mentioned you're really into technology, so I figured you'd appreciate someone who understands quality audio equipment." The audacity was breathtaking. This guy was essentially announcing his intention to move into my space while I stood there like an idiot, legally trapped by Lisa's forged lease documents and unable to physically remove either of them without risking assault charges. I spent that evening researching tenant law and discovered that Lisa's forgery had created a legal nightmare, But it also revealed her greatest weakness: she'd violated multiple lease terms by forging signatures and could face immediate eviction if the building management discovered what she'd done. I pulled up the original lease documents from my email archives and compared them to the version she'd submitted, finding clear evidence of signature forgery that would be obvious to any property manager with basic document verification training. The next morning, while Lisa was at her yoga class probably telling Marcus about her evil, controlling ex-boyfriend, I contacted our building management company and requested a meeting with Mrs. Anderson, the no-nonsense property manager who'd been running the Lincoln Park complex for 15 years and had a reputation for dealing harshly with lease violations. I brought printed copies of both lease versions, highlighted the signature discrepancies, and explained the situation while carefully avoiding any mention of our relationship drama and focusing purely on the legal fraud that had occurred. Mrs. Anderson examined the documents with the methodical attention of someone who'd seen every scam in the book, immediately identifying the forged signature and checking her records to confirm that only I had ever been authorized to sign lease modifications. "Mr. Thompson, this is document fraud, and we take these violations extremely seriously," she said, her stern expression making it clear that Lisa had picked the wrong building to try her scheme on. "I'm going to send a formal notice to Ms. Martinez informing her that she has 72 hours to vacate the premises, and any further lease violations including unauthorized overnight guests or noise complaints will result in immediate eviction proceedings against both tenants." The nuclear option had been deployed, and I felt a grim satisfaction knowing that Lisa's clever legal trap was about to become her own prison. When I got home that evening, I found Marcus making himself completely at home in my kitchen, cooking dinner with groceries I'd paid for while Lisa sat at my dining table complaining about her mother's phone calls, asking uncomfortable questions about her Facebook post. "Lisa," I said calmly, holding up the official notice from building management, "you might want to read this before you get too comfortable with your new living arrangement." The color drained from her face as she read the eviction warning, and I watched Marcus's confident expression falter as he realized he'd walked into a legal minefield instead of a simple romantic triangle. "They can't do this," Lisa stammered. "I'm on the lease now, I have rights." "You forged my signature," I replied quietly, "which makes your lease addition null and void, and Marcus here counts as an unauthorized overnight guest, which violates the building's occupancy rules." Marcus was already grabbing his protein shaker and gym bag, clearly recognizing that this situation was way more complicated than he'd signed up for when he decided to help Lisa find her husband by replacing her boyfriend. "Look man, I didn't know about any of this legal stuff," he said, backing toward the door. "Lisa just said you guys were having problems and she needed a friend to hang out with." The speed of his retreat was almost comical. 1 minute he was Mr. Confident personal trainer ready to steal another man's girlfriend. The next he was practically sprinting away from a woman who'd lied to him about her living situation and dragged him into what looked like a potential criminal fraud case. The very next day, Lisa escalated to full-scale psychological warfare by sending me a detailed email claiming ownership of practically everything valuable in my apartment, from my custom-built gaming setup worth $4,500 to my vintage Martin acoustic guitar that had been my grandfather's. After careful consideration of our shared living situation, her email began with the tone of a legal document. "I believe these items represent relationship investments that we purchased together during our partnership, and I expect equitable distribution of assets before my departure." The audacity was staggering. She was claiming my gaming rig that I'd painstakingly assembled over 2 years, piece by piece, saving for each graphics card upgrade and premium component while she spent her income on designer yoga pants and overpriced smoothie cleanses. She'd even claimed my vintage guitar collection, including the 1967 Martin D28 that my grandfather had passed down to me before he died, writing, "The instruments we acquired during our relationship should be divided fairly since music was an important part of our shared experience." The fact that she'd never shown any interest in music and had actually complained about me playing guitar while she was trying to meditate made this claim particularly infuriating. Her email continued with threats about small claims court and her right to compensation for emotional labor and domestic contributions over our 3-year relationship, as if cooking occasionally and doing her own laundry somehow entitled her to half my possessions. But Lisa had made one crucial mistake. She was trying to play legal hardball with a software developer who documented everything obsessively and had digital receipts going back years for every major purchase. I spent the evening pulling together an evidence package that would make any lawyer weep with joy, starting with purchase receipts for every piece of equipment she'd claimed, all clearly showing my name and credit card information with dates spanning back to before I'd even met her. The gaming setup alone had 43 separate receipts from different vendors over 18 months, each component carefully researched and purchased with my own money while she was still working retail and complaining about her $12 an hour wage. I found warranty registration emails, credit card statements, and even old social media posts where Lisa had thanked me for your amazing new guitar when I'd bought my Taylor acoustic 2 years ago, and your incredible sound system when I'd upgraded my studio monitors. The digital trail was ironclad and showed exactly what I'd suspected. She'd never contributed financially to any of these purchases, but had certainly enjoyed the benefits of dating someone who invested in quality equipment. My colleague Jake helped me move everything valuable to a secure storage unit downtown while Lisa was at her Saturday morning yoga instructor training, loading my entire home studio setup, gaming rig, guitar collection, and expensive photography equipment into his van before she could return with some kind of court order or repo crew. I documented everything with time-stamped photos and video, showing serial numbers and condition reports that would hold up in any legal proceeding she might threaten. When she came home to find empty spaces where my entertainment center and music corner used to be, along with a printed packet of purchase receipts and warranty documents proving my sole ownership of everything she'd claimed, her reaction was absolutely priceless. "You can't just steal our shared property," she screamed, waving her phone around like she was going to call the police on me for moving my own belongings out of my own apartment. "Check the receipts, Lisa," I replied calmly, highlighting my name and credit card numbers on every single purchase document, including the screenshots of your own Facebook posts thanking me for my guitar and my sound system that you now think belong to both of us. I'd even included her old Instagram stories where she'd posed with my equipment, using captions like, "Boyfriend's set up his goals," and "So lucky he lets me use his recording studio," which completely undermined any claim that she'd considered these items jointly owned during our relationship. The evidence package also included text messages where she'd asked to borrow my camera equipment for her yoga photo shoots and emails where she'd thanked me for letting her practice guitar on Your Beautiful Martin when she was going through her short-lived musical phase last summer. Facing eviction and the loss of her claim to my possessions, Lisa launched into full desperation mode with a sophisticated social media campaign designed to destroy my reputation and paint me as the villain in our breakup story. She created a private Facebook group called Women Supporting Women and invited 43 of our mutual friends, then began sharing carefully edited text message screenshots that removed all context to make me look controlling and financially manipulative. Her posts started with seemingly reasonable complaints about partners who use money to control relationships, but quickly escalated to direct accusations about my character, complete with crying selfies and captions about finally finding the courage to speak my truth after years of emotional abuse. The most damaging post included a screenshot of a text where I'd told her she needed to contribute more financially, but she'd cropped out the part where she'd just spent $800 on designer workout clothes while claiming she couldn't afford groceries, making it look like I was demanding money from someone who was already struggling. She posted tear-filled Instagram stories about recognizing the signs of financial manipulation and how I had supposedly monitored her spending and isolated her from friends, conveniently omitting the fact that I'd paid for her expensive hobbies while she spent her own income on luxury items she couldn't afford. The character assassination was surprisingly effective at first. Several mutual friends started treating me differently, and I noticed people avoiding eye contact when I ran into them at coffee shops or the gym, clearly believing Lisa's version of events without hearing my side of the story. Her campaign included posts about how I'd forced her to depend on me financially by paying for her yoga training, then used that dependency to control her life choices, completely twisting the reality that I'd voluntarily supported her career change because I thought we were building a future together. She even claimed that my social media response to her husband hunting post was evidence of my explosive temper and tendency toward public humiliation tactics, which was rich coming from someone who'd started the entire drama by publicly announcing she was shopping for my replacement. The most manipulative part was how she framed our apartment situation, claiming I was trying to make her homeless by exposing the forged lease documents, while presenting herself as a victim who'd only added her name to protect herself from an abusive partner who might kick her out without warning. But Lisa had made a critical error in her character assassination campaign, She was attacking someone who worked in technology and understood digital evidence better than she did. I'd been secretly recording our arguments for weeks using a voice memo app on my phone, not because I planned to use the recordings against her, but because her gaslighting had made me question my own memory of events and I wanted to be able to review what had actually been said. Those recordings captured Lisa admitting to using me financially, laughing about her plan to trade up to someone wealthier, and even bragging to her friends about how easy it was to manipulate nice guys like me who felt guilty about having more money than their girlfriends. I had hours of audio where she discussed her strategy for the lease forgery, her intention to claim ownership of my possessions, and her belief that I was too weak to fight back against her manipulation because I'd been conditioned to avoid conflict in relationships. The recordings also captured her true feelings about our relationship, including a phone conversation with her sister where she called me a safe backup plan and discussed her timeline for finding someone more ambitious and financially successful before she turned 30. Rather than engage in a public social media battle that would have made both of us look petty, I compiled all the evidence into a comprehensive package and decided to go directly to the source of Lisa's credibility, the people who knew her best and whose opinions actually mattered to her reputation in our social circle and family. Instead of defending myself publicly against Lisa's social media smear campaign, I took a much more strategic approach by sending a comprehensive evidence package directly to her father, Greg Martinez, a respected CPA who'd always treated me fairly and valued honesty above family loyalty during the 3 years I'd been dating his daughter. Greg was the kind of old-school professional who built his reputation on integrity and had zero tolerance for financial manipulation or document fraud, which made him the perfect person to review the evidence of Lisa's behavior without the emotional bias that might cloud other family members' judgment. The package I sent him was methodical and thorough, including the original and forged lease documents with detailed analysis highlighting the signature discrepancies, complete audio recordings of Lisa admitting to the forgery and discussing her manipulation strategies, and financial records showing the pattern of her using me as a personal ATM while contributing nothing to our shared expenses. I included screenshots of her own social media posts where she'd thanked me for my possessions that she later tried to claim as relationship assets, text message threads where she'd openly discussed using me financially, and most damaging of all, the recorded phone conversation where she'd called me her backup plan and discussed her timeline for trading up to someone wealthier. The cover letter I wrote was professional and factual, avoiding any emotional language or personal attacks while simply presenting the evidence and letting Greg draw his own conclusions about his daughter's character and the lies she'd been spreading about our relationship. "I'm not asking you to take sides in our breakup," I wrote, "but I thought you deserved to know the truth about what really happened, especially since Lisa has been telling people I was financially controlling and emotionally abusive when the evidence clearly shows the opposite was true." The response was swift and decisive. Within 24 hours of receiving my evidence package, Greg had called an emergency family meeting that included Lisa's mother Carmen, her sister Emma, and her uncle Roberto, who worked in law enforcement and could explain the serious legal implications of document forgery. I wasn't present for that family intervention, but the results were immediately visible across Lisa's social media presence, which went completely silent for the first time in months as her family undoubtedly confronted her with the evidence of her lies and manipulation. Several mutual friends who'd been avoiding me suddenly started reaching out with apologetic messages, clearly having received clarification from Lisa's family about the real situation, and Lisa's Women Supporting Women Facebook group was quietly deleted along with all her posts about emotional abuse and financial manipulation. The most telling sign that Greg had taken decisive action was when Lisa's sister Emma called me directly to apologize for believing her sister's lies and to let me know that the family was handling the situation internally and that I wouldn't be dealing with any more harassment or false accusations. "My dad is absolutely furious about the lease forgery," Emma told me during that conversation, "and he's making Lisa take full responsibility for her actions, including apologizing to everyone she lied to about you and getting professional help for her manipulative behavior." Within 3 days of that family intervention, Lisa had completely stopped her social media campaign, quietly announced she was taking time to focus on personal growth, and began frantically packing her belongings while avoiding all eye contact with me, clearly understanding that her family now knew exactly who she really was and what she'd been doing to me throughout our relationship. 8 months after Lisa moved out in shame and I'd rebuilt my life with a promotion to senior developer, new friendships, and a healthy relationship with Rachel, a brilliant UX designer from my company. I was scrolling through Instagram during my lunch break when I saw Lisa's engagement announcement pop up in my feed. The photo showed her beaming with an enormous diamond ring on her finger, standing next to Marcus, the same personal trainer who'd fled my apartment when he discovered her legal troubles, with a caption announcing their upcoming wedding at the Palmer House Hilton, one of Chicago's most exclusive and expensive venues. The post was dripping with luxury lifestyle imagery, featuring photos of champagne tastings, venue tours, and designer dress fittings, clearly designed to project an image of wealth and success that seemed impossible given what I knew about both their financial situations. I knew Lisa was still working part-time at various yoga studios while trying to rebuild her reputation after her family intervention, and Marcus was a personal trainer at a mid-tier gym whose biggest clients were suburban soccer moms, so the $30,000 plus wedding they were advertising seemed completely beyond their means. My curiosity got the better of me, and a little digging revealed that Lisa had been posting about her family money and how grateful she was that her parents were helping fund their dream wedding, which I knew was complete fiction since her father had cut off all financial support after discovering her manipulation and fraud. The wedding announcement included details about a lavish reception for 200 guests, an open bar with top-shelf liquor, a 7-course dinner prepared by the hotel's award-winning chef, and a live band that charged more per hour than most people made in a month. I remembered the Palmer House from corporate events. Everything there was ridiculously expensive, from the $500 per person dinner minimum to the $10,000 room rental fees, making this wedding easily a $50,000 plus affair that neither Lisa nor Marcus could possibly afford on their actual incomes. 2 weeks before the wedding, I happened to run into Lisa's former coworker Jessica at a coffee shop near my office, and she filled me in on details that made the whole situation even more bizarre and concerning. Lisa's been telling everyone that her family is loaded and they're paying for everything, Jessica said, but she's also been maxing out credit cards and taking out personal loans to cover expenses that her family money supposedly can't handle, and Marcus has no idea about any of it. The pattern was disturbingly familiar. Lisa was using the same manipulation tactics she'd used on me, convincing Marcus that she had family wealth to back up their expensive lifestyle while secretly going into massive debt to maintain the illusion. Jessica mentioned that Lisa had been bragging about how she'd learned from her mistakes with me and found someone who appreciated her worth and wouldn't try to control her spending, which was rich considering she was financing their entire relationship through credit card fraud and predatory loans. On the morning of the wedding, I was working from home when I received an anonymous tip through my work email with detailed information about Lisa's financial situation, including screenshots of maxed-out credit cards, loan applications, and bank statements showing negative balances across multiple accounts. The anonymous source had clearly done their homework, providing evidence that Lisa owed over $85,000 in credit card debt and high-interest personal loans, all taken out in the past 6 months to fund wedding expenses and maintain her fake wealthy lifestyle for Marcus. I stared at this information for several minutes, debating whether to act on it, when I remembered Lisa's original Facebook post that started this whole mess, her declaration that I was blocking her from finding her husband. The irony was perfect. She'd found her husband, but she was about to destroy him financially with the same manipulative behavior that had ended our relationship. I made an anonymous call to the Palmer House financial department, explaining that there might be payment issues with the Martinez-Johnson wedding and suggesting they might want to verify that the final balance had been settled before the ceremony began. I attached Lisa's original boyfriend blocking husband post as context, along with a note explaining that the bride had a history of financial deception and document fraud that might be relevant to their payment verification process. 3 hours later, my phone exploded with notifications as wedding guests began posting confused and dramatic stories about the ceremony being interrupted by hotel management demanding immediate payment of the outstanding $15,000 balance before the reception could proceed. The Instagram stories were absolutely priceless. Videos of Lisa in her $3,000 designer wedding dress crying hysterically as Marcus discovered the truth about her debts, her lies about family money, and her history of using men as financial resources while the entire wedding party watched in stunned silence. Marcus called off the wedding right there in the hotel lobby, screaming about being lied to and manipulated while 150 guests stood around in their formal attire watching Lisa's perfect facade crumble in the most public way possible, and I watched every moment of it unfold through social media from the comfort of my apartment. Feeling nothing but satisfied vindication that karma had finally caught up with someone who thought she could treat people like disposable ATMs, the door, Lisa just said. You guys were having problems and she needed a friend to hang out with. The speed of his retreat was almost comical. 1 minute he was Mr. Confident personal trainer ready to steal another man's girlfriend. The next he was practically sprinting away from a woman who'd lied to him about her living situation and dragged him into what looked like a potential criminal fraud case.